Hi, everyone. So glad you could join us again for the Grief Healing Telesummit. Top experts share their best holistic healing methods to transform grief into healing and living again. My name is Chelsea Hansen. I'm your host, founder of With Sympathy Gifts and Keepsakes, as well as Global Grace, the World Association of Spiritual Grief Healing. We have a very special guest for you today, Shelley Ryuda. And Shelley actually has been my personal mentor over the last probably 4 to 5 years. So she is an expert in holistic healing methods, so we are so glad to have her on the call. And to give you the specifics, actually, she is the founder and president of the Global Association of Holistic Psychotherapy, also known as the GAP, and the GAP supports therapists, healers, coaches, and health practitioners to learn more about holistic healing methods and to develop thriving holistic practices. Today, Shelley will be talking to us about using your spirit and spiritual connection to transform your life after loss. Welcome, Shelley.
Oh, so excited to be here, Chelsea. Just like you said, we've been working together, and to just, be with you in this amazing telesummit that you're doing is just such an honor, and just so happy.
Yeah, we're glad to have you because I know you have a lot of valuable information to share that will be helpful in healing both for the newly bereaved person or bereaved person in general, as well as tools that actual professional psychotherapists, counselors can use. So that'll be great. Right. And then for the people who aren't familiar with you already, can you give us a little bit of background, how you got started in your line of work?
Sure. Well, I am, my history is I had been a holistic psychotherapist for, 15 or 16 years. And over those 16 years, I always was oriented towards being a holistic psychotherapist. And a lot of times people would say, like, well, what does that mean? That you're a holistic psychotherapist. And really what it is using, mind, body, spirit techniques to really accelerate, your healing, whether you're struggling with grief or depression or anxiety or relationship struggles. We have so many beautiful holistic methods that really work at the spiritual level, which is what we'll be talking about today, and really what Chelsea's been talking about here in the Telesummit. And, because I really believe that true healing is really the reconnection with our spirit, that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and that oftentimes people are struggling and in pain so much because they have lost that connection, both with their spirit and their spiritual connection. So really the healing, when I talk about being a holistic psychotherapist, and now when we do the trainings in the GAP for therapists, healers, and coaches, it is about, teaching people to reconnect with their spirits, their spiritual connections, and to really, and it really changes the whole landscape of healing when you're oriented in that way. And so that's what motivated me to start the association, which we did 3 years ago, because I was having such amazing results with working with my clients. And I knew there was a hunger really throughout the world for this kind of spiritual healing, this reconnection, this collective reconnection that's happening, what I call an awakening happening in the world right now. And Chelsea's, a major person in this awakening with the work that she's doing, with Sympathy Gifts and upcoming through Global Grace, which is amazing. So really, so many people are wanting this, because I developed a thriving holistic business in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So you would think on the surface that wouldn't be the place that people were really hungering, for holistic approaches. But when I found the level of response, I really got at a deep level. People around the world are really searching for this way of healing and approaching, the struggles that they're having in their life.
Yeah, that is awesome that you've discovered that, Shelley, and can share it with all of us, because firsthand I've seen what a difference it's made for me, as well as a lot of the other people in your association. So that is awesome. And I do have a quick question. When we lose that connection from our spirit, when do you think that happens? Like when we're fairly young, when our conditioned self kicks in? Or tell us a little bit about that.
Right. That's a really great question, because it is. So often what would happen is people would come to me for counseling, and one of the things how I explain when I start working with someone is this whole concept that you have an authentic self, your spirit. And then you also have another part of you that you developed called your conditioned self, and that's really your false self. This is a part of you that you develop to kind of operate and navigate through your life, but it's not you. And so typically that can begin to develop. This protective part of you, this conditioned self is more of a protective part of you, can really develop. I've worked with some clients where they started developing that in the womb, and they could feel the energy, from their mom, maybe a lot of fear and a lot of struggle that their mom was having, or their father, or there was a lot of conflict in the family. So they started to develop this real protective conditioned part of them. Or it can develop as a small child, where the child is trying to navigate with their parents who are already maybe in their conditioned selves, so they have to kind of navigate that. So they kind of work with their conditioned self. They kind of tuck their authentic self, their spirit, away, and start to operate from this protective part. So it can happen really young. Or it can happen at a pivotal time, growing up. So it could be even through like a grief experience. Someone loses someone that they really loved, and it could be so painful if they're not getting support for that. They can develop, this conditioned part of them that's trying to help them through that. So there can be a variety of times when that happens, and then different situations can be catalysts to kind of move deeper into the conditioned self. And that, what happens when people move farther and farther away from their authentic self and their spirit, the more they begin to suffer. And oftentimes, grief is a big catalyst for people, because if they've been operating from their conditioned self and then they move into a grief experience, so let's say they're already disconnected from their spirit, already disconnected from their spiritual connection, then they go through a grief experience. It can be excruciating when there's a disconnection, and then there is grief. The pain of grief enters in.
And
so
I also like to explain the conditioned self. I can use my own words as well. I like to call it the adaptive self, kind of like how you adapt to the world around you.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to fit in, that's when you lose your real self.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's a great way of putting it, Chelsea. Yeah, it's real descriptive, adaptive. Yeah, that you're trying to fit in, you're trying to make sense and navigating, so you're doing all this adapting rather than being yourself.
Sure,
yes.
Sure. And I know for me, personally in my life, I have a 7-year-old son. So I'm working very hard as I can, to keep him out of that conditioned self, adaptive self. And I know I won't be able to do it all by myself, but at least I can give him the tools, because us as adults, we're learning all these tools to reclaim our authentic self. But I'm like, with our children, if we could keep them as authentic, as real, as long as we can, they won't have to be doing all this work to reclaim themselves.
Yes,
so
absolutely. And that's such a good point with your son, Chelsea. Yeah, and for many people listening, you have children, and the wonderful thing that you can do that can help so much is to see who they are as spirits, that they're unique and they have different ways of expressing themselves and really supporting that uniqueness and reflecting back to them their spirit, like different aspects of their spirit. Again, not their accomplishments, because so often the conditioned self gets into achievement and being perfect and getting good grades, and
sure.
which is different than we are whole and complete and worthy and valuable just as we are, as these amazing spiritual beings. And so the more we can love our children unconditionally and say, I value you just for your very being, just for your existence. And yes, if you're, doing well in school and accomplishing things, that's great, but my love is not contingent on those things.
And then for us as adults, when we are mirroring back to ourselves, I know you were kind of describing how to do that right now, but can you give me an example of like a couple things like people listening can say to themselves to help them mirror back how great they are?
Right. Yeah, I'm so glad you're bringing this up. Yeah, what Chelsea's talking about, because Chelsea's been through our certification training program, so she knows these exercises that we teach there. And this is one of my favorite ones. And this is, the idea that throughout the day, you are talking to yourself, and you're either letting your conditioned self judge you, say things like, you're not good enough, or, you're not getting enough done, and, there's something wrong with you. That's the voice of the conditioned self. It's, filled with judgment. And so what you can do to really make a big shift in how you feel throughout the day, I mean, this is major, when I have clients implement this or people in certification implement this, and that is consciously mirroring throughout the day from a very loving part of you is really reflecting back your authentic self, your spirit. So it could be things like, I just love how sensitive you are. So many of the people listening are probably highly sensitive. And so a lot of times people that are highly sensitive can actually judge that part of themselves, because a lot of times the culture at large or your parents might judge you for being so, don't be so sensitive. So something that's very healing, if you've experienced that, is to actually appreciate your sensitivity and say, I love how sensitive you are. So this is something I actually do for myself, because I am highly sensitive. So I cry really easily. Like if you see like a very touching commercial, like I'm definitely going to be crying.
I do as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chelsea, I'm sure you probably do too. It doesn't take much, And so I used to, before I did this kind of healing for myself, there used to be a part of me trying to put a lid on that. I didn't want people to see me crying. I would try to hide it, right? And now, instead, I'll say to myself, like, when I start to cry, those tears start to come, I'll say, I love how sensitive you are. That, it's so sweet. I love this tender part of you. So you're really appreciating and accepting and loving a part of you that maybe you've judged, other people have judged, and really appreciating it, because it's an aspect of your spirit. The sensitivity is really a spiritual gift and really needs to be honored and valued and appreciated. So doing that throughout the day, with different aspects of yourself. It could be how kind you are, like, oh, I love how you are so kind, to the person at the grocery store, and I love how you handled that situation, so calmly, or, if you're working on something at work, say, wow, you really are so skilled at writing or presenting, just really mirror back all the different amazing things about yourself throughout the day. And you will find that you're going to feel pretty fabulous when you do that. You're becoming your own, best friend, your own loving support. You're really generating that on the inner level.
And what do you think, using this technique, what would be some examples a person could say to themselves who are going through the grieving process?
Right.
What do you think would be helpful there? Because, you are sometimes crying so much and you're not really appreciating your sensitivity. And I know you said
yeah, you're probably saying, "Gosh, I wish I wasn't so sensitive. This is so painful."
So I know.
Yeah. What is so helpful is that you can. Sorry, I got a little distracted here by Neo, my little dog. So what you can do is, well, one of the things, and I know, Chelsea, you and I talked about, this would be good to bring up, when you're grieving, so when we talk about the authentic self and the conditioned self, while you're grieving, you can actually be in one or the other. So when you're in your authentic self, your grief is about, missing that person and, that the true heartbreak of losing someone that you love. So that's a certain kind of pain. But then if you add another layer from your conditioned self, which is pain like, I will never see that person again. I will never have that kind of connection again in my life, or those are more statements from your conditioned self that are actually not true and can add another layer of pain to the grief to make it really excruciating. And also, like what you're saying, Chelsea, too, if the conditioned self starts to judge yourself as you're grieving too, like, don't, be so sad or all that kind of stuff. So,
like, why aren't I feeling better yet?
Right, exactly. Putting pressure on yourself in the grief process to kind of do it a certain way, or and so the conditioned self can actually, add other layers of pain that actually can make it really intense and overwhelming. So over the years when I've worked with clients who are going through the grieving process, I would help them sift out what was the voice of their authentic self, this real authentic grieving, and how to be loving and supportive to themselves as they were doing that. And then the other thing is I would help them figure out the voice of their conditioned self, when they were inserting unnecessary pain with these messages and things that they were saying to themselves. And that has made a huge difference, because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm just adding this other layer on. No wonder it's so painful.
And then, too, that the voice of the conditioned self, the unnecessary pain, adding the layer, a lot of those messages, of course, are coming from the outside. And
yes.
conditioned self's taking all these messages in you get from society that aren't necessarily helpful. They're part of your conditioned self, not your true, authentic way of mourning and grieving.
Exactly. It's such a great thing that you're mentioning, Chelsea, is, so often the conditioned self mirrors these cultural messages about grieving, like, it's taking too long, or you shouldn't feel this bad, or, that whole thing we have in the culture where you get 3 days off, for bereavement. Right. It's like crazy. Where other cultures honor, they do ceremonies. It's a very involved process and very community involved. And really, in our culture, it's really, people are supposed to just, 3 days, and then you should be like back to normal. And we all know that that's not how grief works, you know.
And
So
can you tell us some examples of? I think we're pretty clear on the conditioned voice, like all those yucky messages, those should messages. You should do this, you should do that. What are some examples of like authentic grief, like how you were saying the true heartbreak, missing that person, just to help the listener kind of distinguish the difference between the two even more so?
Right. I think, you know, the authentic self, it is the, you know, I miss that person. I miss their physical presence. And that's where it gets into, you know, the things that we talk about, Chelsea, is maintaining. So we talk about the disconnection from your spirit operating out of your conditioned self. Then there's this other layer of connecting to the spiritual realm. Because when your loved one has transitioned, they've moved into the spiritual realm. They have transitioned into a different form, but they're still there, you know. So because culturally people aren't acknowledged for being spirits, spiritual beings having a human experience, when a person transitions, so often the belief system can be they're gone. They're literally gone. I'm not going to see them. They're not even there, so to speak. And that can cause a layer of pain. So from the authentic self, you know, and what we talk about with what can be comforting is deep in the authentic self, deep in your spirit, you know the truth. You know that you're a spirit. You know that you maintain a connection with everyone you love. That, you know, like you say, Chelsea, love never dies. Mm-hmm. Love lives on. So the more you access your authentic self, it will be the voice of, I know they're still there. So there's a comfort in connecting with the authentic self and with your spirit. And there's, when you're tuning in at that level, you can begin to feel the connect. When you're in your conditioned self, you can't feel the presence of your loved one with you because your heart is shut down, and they could be all around you. They could be holding you on the spiritual realm in that moment, but you're in your conditioned self. You won't be able to feel it. So the more you're in your authentic self, you're going to feel that heartbreak, but also your heart is going to be open, and you're also going to feel the comfort, and you're going to feel the loved one, and you're going to feel also your spiritual connection supporting you through that as well. So I think just that awareness that the authentic self, deep in the authentic self, knows the truth, and it's just lining up with that again and again, and begin to open up to that idea that my loved one is still there. You know, my father passed away about 2 years ago, and Chelsea was so helpful with her materials, you know, with your book that we read at my dad's memorial service. And really the message of that book, Hello from Heaven, is I'm still here, you know, I'm still with you. And that book was so comforting, and we had so many people come up and say, oh my gosh, I want that book. So people really resonated with the message, but it's not a message that they're hearing in the broader culture, right? So it's looking at having those tools to support your authentic self, the books, you know, the inspiration, listening to these recordings and Chelsea's Telesummit, to help you reconnect with the knowingness of who you really are, and that you're a spirit and your loved one lives on, and, you know, as a spirit in the spiritual realm, you can reconnect. I know when the day that my father passed away, my sister was very upset, you know, and she was heading to the store, and she just stopped the car. And she just burst out crying, and she just said, Dad, she's like, I miss you, I miss you, I miss you, and just started crying. And there was one of her little girls, she's a a little daughter and had a book in there that spontaneously went out. If you open the book, it says this, but the book wasn't open.
Mm-hmm.
And it started going off, and it said, "I love you, I love you, I love you."
Oh, like a talking book?
Yes.
Oh, that is neat.
It was, yeah, it was so sweet. And Vanessa really got, like, that was him comforting her in that moment. And then the same thing happened when we were going to the funeral home to see his body for the first time. I was in the front seat with Vanessa's husband, my brother-in-law, and Vanessa was in back. That's my sister. And I turned around, and Vanessa burst out crying again, and she's just like, I just don't know if I can handle this, right? That's the voice of the conditioned self, right? Because it's disconnected from spirit. All of a sudden, just right after she said that, that book goes off again. I love you, I love you. And I'm like, there's Dad again saying, you can do it, Vanessa. You can, because the truth is in this moment, which is he's still here. He's not really gone, you know. So I think that those messages from the authentic self, you know, which is to reconnect with the truth that your loved one lives on, and you can allow yourself to feel the depth of the loss of the physical presence, but you can also cultivate the capacity to maintain that connection with your loved one through the spiritual realm.
Yeah, and tell us a little more about cultivating that connection, both, I guess, connecting with your own personal spirit and the spiritual realm.
Yeah. So over the years in my practice, you know, I've studied with so many amazing mentors, and one of my mentors is Margaret Paul. She developed a process called inner bonding. And one of the things that I learned through my work with her is and actually I learned it from another mentor as well, so a few different people, but I worked with her quite a bit, and it was about cultivating that connection with your spiritual connection. So the idea is each and every one of us has a spiritual connection, and it could be, depending on what your spiritual beliefs are, you know, it could be Jesus, it could be Buddha, it could be an angel, it could be a Native American medicine person. So it's different for each person. And so, you know, what I learned over the years with working with clients is to help them reconnect with this spiritual presence that's already with them, actually has been with them from their birth, and is already communicating to them through feelings, through thoughts, through different things. You know, when you have a coincidence, you know, when you run into somebody or you see just the right book, you know, that is a lot of the activity of your spiritual connection. And so what I did in my practice, and now we teach in certification, is this different processes on how to reconnect with that spiritual connection and have a direct experience of connecting. So the idea is we're in physical bodies, or spiritual beings in physical bodies, and the spiritual realm operates at a higher frequency. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, it's at a higher frequency, so we can't see it with our physical eyes, but we can feel it, and we can have ways of connecting with it that are more non-physical ways. And so this is something that I first developed personally, that I was able to develop this connection with my spiritual connection. But what ended up happening, because I got really good at it and developed a really strong connection, I started to be able to connect with loved ones that had transitioned as well. Like, I have a close relationship with my grandmother who passed away when I was 7, and all of a sudden she started coming to me, and what it would be is, so a lot of times she'd come to me when I was lying in bed at night, and all of a sudden I would just sense like, oh, Grandma's here. It's like it's developing a capacity to feel these very subtle awarenesses. You know how like someone walks into the room sometimes and your back is turned, and maybe you didn't even hear them walk into the room, but you're like, oh, someone's there, or you know who it is, because you're feeling their energy, you're feeling their presence. It's a little bit like that when you feel someone's spirit next to you or near you. It's a little bit like an awareness. And oftentimes, I mean, they could have been there, for a long time, and it's just all of a sudden you became aware of it because you cultivated this capacity to tune in to this more subtle awareness. And where you connect in the spiritual realm is through your imagination, right? That's the bridge. So it's closing your eyes. It's going into, when you do guided imageries and visualizations, and it's a way of seeing and feeling the spiritual realm. So those are some, so the more you begin to practice, so we teach this actually in certification. So Chelsea's gone through certification. We have a list of people on our website that have gone through certification, so they know these different methods on how to teach you how to cultivate this connection, how to begin to tune into it. And we typically start with your own spiritual connection, your personal spiritual connection, but the neat thing about it is it begins to expand, and you can begin to have more contact than with your loved ones.
And
like my sister. Yes.
Explain this if you don't mind.
Sure.
Tell us more about our personal spiritual connection and how to tune into that. So we have our own, but then we have all the other people we can visit as well. So tell us a little bit about our own.
Well, like I was saying, the way to tune into your spiritual connection is to practice, and you can do it through guided imagery, and you can do it through things that lift your vibration. So when your vibration is low, meaning when you're in your conditioned self, you're typically in a low vibration, right? So if you walk into a room and everyone there is in their conditioned self, meaning their hearts are closed down, they're judging, they're filled with self-doubt, they might be angry, it's going to be very low vibration, right? If you walk into a room and everyone's connected to their authentic self and their spirit, so they're in a state of joy, they're laughing, they're connected with the truth, they know their own worth and lovability, it's going to be a high vibration. There's going to be a lot of fun, laughter, joy. There's going to be a feeling of love just permeating the room. That's a high vibration. And the higher your vibration is, the easier it is to hear and sense and feel your spiritual connection. So the first step is you want to begin to practice having your vibration get a bit higher. And the other thing to pay attention to as well is, when we treat our bodies really well, when we eat really healthy foods and exercise and take good care of our physical bodies, our vibration goes up again. Because you know how sometimes, when people are grieving, they'll start to use comfort food, like sugar and all these different things to kind of comfort themselves, and then what happens is it can lower their vibration, so then they can feel isolated and alone. So that's something to pay attention as you're going through the grieving process. Do as much as you can to try to eat foods that are healthy. There's healthy food that can be comforting too, so find healthy food, that's comforting, rather than get into unhealthy food that's going to lower your vibration, disconnect you from your own spirit and then also make it harder for you to feel the spiritual realm. Prayer raises your vibration, so saying prayers, lighting a candle, meditating, clearing your mind, because so much of the conditioned self is based on thoughts spinning around your mind. So when you quiet your mind, you're going to be more able to feel your own spirit and then also feel the subtle energy of your spiritual connection, right? So I always say it's like your spiritual connection and your loved ones, it's like they're whispering very softly, and so you have to get very quiet to hear and sense and feel them. So if you have the TV blaring and, loud music and, your mind is going a mile a minute, it's going to be harder to sense the spiritual realm when that's going on.
So ideally, like when you're saying prayer, candles, meditation, it's kind of like you're developing your own spiritual practice to help you connect both to your spirit, your loved ones, and whether that's going out in nature or you can really brainstorm a whole list of things that calm you so you can have your daily practice.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chelsea. Yes, doing the stuff that you love, that really nurtures you, nurtures your spirit, like Chelsea's saying, like nature, if you love to listen to music, if you love to do artwork, those things all raise your vibration too, your frequency. So making a list of those things, and I know it's hard going through the grieving process. Sometimes the things that you love to do, you don't have a lot of, you might not feel like doing them, right? So it might be just gently urging yourself to do it, or take have a whole list of things that you love to do that are nurturing to you, and maybe pick the one that appeals to you the most. So it might be doing inspirational reading. So you look at that list and you're like, oh, I can't dance. I don't feel like dancing, but I could read. I could do some inspirational reading.
Yeah, that's an awesome idea to pick kind of from your list of what you feel up to. And I was just thinking about it too. When my mother passed away, as an example, I was in the library one day looking at books, probably trying to find some comfort. Yeah. And I was drawn to the aisle that had like pictures of like flowers, because I like flowers. So I had a sudden urge that I wanted to go get a book about flowers and start drawing flowers. And because when I was younger, I liked art. So I'm sure that was my spirit, or perhaps the influence of my mother just giving me a tip on something to do to feel better. So that's as simple as that. You get these little urges or inklings.
That's so neat. Yes. That you followed that guidance and it was leading you to comfort. Yeah.
Right, and you're like, well, why should I go draw flowers? That sounds stupid. So that's the conditioned part saying no.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's such a great point, Chelsea. That's so often what's healing, those nudges can maybe not make sense to your conditioned self.
Sure.
But to still listen to them like you did, because that was trying to come through. So listening to those subtle messages, because you are being guided to be comforted.
And then, too, I think the more you trust yourself to listen to them, then you're almost like proving to yourself, yeah, this works. Follow my spirit. Yay.
You're right. And then that makes you like, the next time it happens, when you get a suggestion to do something, you have that memory like, oh, last time I did, it really helped me a lot. I think I'll do that again.
Sure. Yeah, very
cool. It really builds that trust and openness to kind of follow it even more.
And let me ask you one other question. In certification, you taught a technique that actually was very powerful to a couple of people in the group who did it, who hadn't fully grieved the loss of a loved one. Just how we take the 15 minutes a day. Could you explain that technique?
Yeah.
And in your safe place?
Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad you're bringing this up. So what it is, so this is something that I would teach my clients over the years, and like what Chelsea's saying, teach it now in certification. And that can be really helpful when you're grieving, is to the first thing is find a really sacred place in your home. And it could be really anywhere. And you can have a table where you put pictures of your loved one. You could put a candle. It could be, things that are spiritually significant for you. But finding like a designated place that you can go to every day for 15 to 20 minutes that really is your sacred place to do your grieving. And you can write letters to your loved one. You could look at pictures of them. You can talk out loud to them. You could have, light that candle. You can, burn some incense. You can sing a song, really anything you're moved to, but you're just carving out that 15 to 20 minutes every day that you're designating to connect with them, to allow all those emotions to come out full force, because a lot of times during the day you're feeling like you might have to hold those in if you're around other people and don't feel comfortable sharing that. So this is a safe place where you can let yourself feel the depth of your emotions and express it as fully as you can. And it's really powerful. When I've taught this to clients over the years, they say knowing that they have that time every day made such a difference for them, and just really opened up a space for them to go into the depth of those feelings and to feel them and to release them. And then also opens up the space for that connection with their loved one too, and having these amazing spiritual experiences. So it really is a sacred space both for the grieving, and then also opens up a space to really connect with their loved one as well.
And I think I recall one of the participants in certification, she had done this process, and one of her parents, I believe it was her mom, who had passed away 10 years earlier, right around there. She did this, and she actually really got sick, and it seems like she was sick in the similar area that her mom was sick.
Oh, so, right, yes.
So she just was able to release a lot of buried emotions. So this sounds so simple. It is simple, but like Shelley's saying, it's very powerful. It works. And and I know you're grieving and feeling bad all day sometimes when you're new to the grieving process.
Right.
So, but that sacred time does make a difference. So.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yes. Like you're saying, Chelsea, in the beginning stages, it can be all day that you're feeling that way too, but treating, you could create the space and just be in that space to work with your emotions very consciously. Again, noticing when they're coming from the authentic self, when they're coming from the conditioned self, opening up to the knowingness in your spirit that you are still deeply connected to your loved one, feeling the comfort from your loved one and also the spiritual realm while you're grieving is important, because if you cut yourself off, if you're in the pain and you shut your heart down a little bit, you go into this intensity, you want to imagine. This is another thing I've taught clients. If you could imagine, you allow, and if you could imagine it's like a child part of you that's feeling the depth of the grief, and you could get a stuffed animal or a doll and hold it, and imagine that that's the part of you. It's like a younger, more tender part of you that's in this pain, and that you're going to be the mom, the comforter, the mom or the dad to comfort this part of you. And so if you could imagine that you allow that part of you to go into the depth of the grief, but at the same time you have a loving part of yourself, like a more adult part of you, a higher part of you, that's holding the part of you that's grieving. So you're comforting yourself, and you're allowing yourself to grieve all at the same time. And then the other thing you can add is your spiritual connection being with you, supporting you to do this. So you're holding and comforting this bear or this doll that's representing the part of you that's in so much pain. And clients love this because it's a way to actually comfort themselves. It's like a way of self-soothing and comforting, and it makes, the pain more bearable. I always use the analogy, like if a child is crying, in a room and no one comes to comfort that child, the child will cry for a really long time, right? But if the child is crying in a room and a really loving person walks in and puts their arms around them and says, I'm so sorry that you're hurting, and I'm here for you, and I'm going to be here with you to comfort you, and you're not alone, the child stops crying, right? Because they're being comforted. That's what you want to do with yourself while you're grieving, is be that loving presence that walks into the room to the part of you in so much pain and puts, your arms around that part and says, I'm here for you. I know this is so painful and your heart is broken, but I am with you every step of the way. You're not alone. Our spiritual connection is here. Our loved one is still here too. So we're here for you. You're not alone in your pain.
And it almost gives you, the person, don't you feel more empowered? Like, wow, I can really make a difference to help me soothe my pain. You don't have to be passive. You can be more active because there are tools to help you, correct?
Exactly. That's a really great point, because sometimes people can feel so helpless in the grief because it feels almost like a tidal wave, like, oh my gosh, I feel like just, overpowered by the intensity of my grief. And what Chelsea is saying is so true. This shifts you into, wow, I could really be there for that intense pain. I don't have to let that wave of pain just take me down and I'm curled into a ball in the middle of the room. I can bring this energy of comfort in to really support myself so I don't feel so helpless and overwhelmed.
And one more question on that topic. What do you suggest the listeners do as far as you're giving them this valuable technique, this way to self-soothe them, help themselves? How could they get their family involved to help them, or what are your thoughts there?
So are you saying, Chelsea, is it a situation where everyone has lost, like it's like a intimate family member and everyone is grieving, or is it a situation where, the people around them are not directly impacted by that grieving? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, kind of like how would a support person help? Like pretend you perhaps lost a parent, and how can your spouse or friends help you? Because the people on the outside, of course, want to help you, and usually they don't know what to do. So is there something you could suggest that the bereaved person could tell them on how to help? Or what are your thoughts there?
Well, I think this whole tuning in thing to their spirit and their authentic self, because that's where they're going to know what they truly need. Like, I really need someone to, I just really need someone to sit with me and hold my hand.
Okay.
So the more you're in touch with your authentic self, and you can ask so imagine asking your authentic self to say, like, and again, talking to yourself like, you're a child, or that part of you as a child, and to say, honey, what would feel good to you right now? What would you really love? What would be comforting to you? And that part of you might say, you know what, I just want to talk and have someone listen. I just want to cry and express all my feelings and just have someone be there and be loving and listen to me and, put their arm around me. So the more you can ask yourself that, like, what do I really need, then the more direct you can be with people. It could be, yes, I would love you to sit next to me. And you could be, people love to, if you're clear about what you need, people love when you're direct with that, because a lot of times they're feeling helpless, like, gosh, I want to help you, but I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to do to be comforting. So the more you can tune into, well, what would be comforting for me right now, and then, take the risk of being direct about it. Like, I would really love to take a walk in nature, but I don't want to go alone. Would you come with me and walk with me? And I just want to be silent as we walk. I really don't want to talk because I just want to be with my spirit and with my spiritual connection, but I'd love to have you with me. I'd love to feel you with me too. So the more direct and specific you can be, the more then you can get the support you need from those around you.
And then similar to what we talked about before, the more success you have in doing it, the more you'll want to do it and the easier it'll come to you.
Right. Exactly. So the more you have, take those risks and ask for support from people around you. And sure. to know which people to reach out to. And sometimes it might take, sometimes you don't know exactly who to reach out to, because, you always hear people say, like, oh, I always thought this person would be there for me when something happened, and then all of a sudden they weren't, So
sure.
Sometimes it's not predictable who can be supportive and who's not able to be. So you might have to take a few risks, and if someone is not able to be, again, you could either respond to that from your conditioned self or your authentic self.
Sure.
Let's say you do take the risk and ask for something, and someone maybe doesn't return your phone call or just vanishes, So what do you need to do to take care of yourself in the face of that? So the key thing would be to definitely, obviously, not take it personally, and just tell yourself the truth that there's somehow it's triggered something in them that they're not able to be there for me, but I'm going to find someone who is able to be there for me. Because sometimes people, if they get that kind of reaction from someone, then they stop reaching out. They stop taking the risk. Mm. So you want to be very committed and say, I'm still going to do it. Yeah.
And that's such a big topic for people. And I know we're getting to the end of our time, and you have the exercise for us. But I wanted to ask, because what you see happens, what I see happens, people sometimes will lose relationships with others after death because that person they thought would be for, would help them really doesn't. So I know you're saying don't take it personally. What other tips can you tell us? Because that really sometimes leaves that feeling of rejection and sadness. And I know we're saying it's their story. They got triggered. They can't help you. But is there a little more you can tell us on how to help ourselves? Because I know that's so painful.
It is, because here you are grieving the loss, and that's so intense already. And then all of a sudden you're having these other losses, And like I was talking to my stepmom, because my dad passed away 2 years ago, and the big adjustment for her is, and this is, many of you listening might have this, and that is when you're a part of a couple and then that person passes away, now you're single, you're on your own, And so what she was finding is her couple friends, they weren't inviting her to things like they used to, right?
Yeah.
That's an example of that grief, right?
Right.
So wow, here my good friends are not inviting me so much anymore. So that's another layer of grief. That not only do I have to grieve the loss of my loved one, but also these friendships. So comforting yourself and saying, I'm so sorry that so and so they're not available, they're not reaching out to you, and it really then moves. So what she has done is really then has cultivated other connections and other friendships and has opened herself up to new connections in her life. So that's one, it's painful, and it is like you're saying, Chelsea, comfort yourself. I think for many people it's an unexpected layer of loss that they didn't quite know was going to be there.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest. It's like no one is ever really prepared for loss anyway, but then they're not prepared for other kinds of losses that go with the initial loss. So I think just being very gentle with yourself and just being so compassionate with yourself, like, again, going to the authentic self, I'm so sorry, honey, that not only did you lose, this person that you love so deeply, but here you're losing these friendships, and I know that's so sad, and I know that hurts your heart. And so, being compassionate with the pain of that, and acknowledging it, because sometimes people will they're in such shock from it, they won't even acknowledge it or talk about it even. It's like almost talking about it brings the pain up, and, they just don't know what to do with it anyway. So the most powerful thing you can do is be compassionate with yourself and really extend that compassion. Compassion is one of the most healing energies. And the interesting thing about it, Chelsea, compassion is something we can extend to ourselves. Everyone listening, I know you're very loving and open-hearted and caring, and we're used to extending compassion to the people around us. But the wonderful thing about compassion is you can extend it to yourself. And you can extend that just how loving you are with other people, you can do it with yourself. So extend this beautiful energy of compassion.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're extending or using your gifts on yourself.
Exactly. That's so true. Like, why not be the recipient of your loving heart and your compassion?
Right. That's an awesome technique that you've shared with everyone to help, especially in that area, because that's so common. So I'm glad you're able to enlighten us with something that will help.
Yeah.
And then, go ahead.
No, because I'm so glad we talked about it too, Chelsea, because I'm feeling, as we're talking about it, I'm just feeling people that are listening really are experiencing this. So I'm so glad we're talking about it. Yeah,
absolutely. And then tell us, I think you had a special exercise you were going to share with us as well.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things, as I talked earlier, that to connect with the energy of your own spirit and your spiritual connection and your loved one, you need to raise your frequency. And so here's an exercise to kind of do that, so to really lift your vibrations. And this is something like, let's say you take that sacred time that we talked about earlier, and this is an exercise you can do during that sacred time to really shift your energy and raise your frequency so you can begin to connect more. So if you just want to take a few deep breaths, and breathing fully is another way to raise your frequency. When you hold your breath, it can, lower your frequency because we actually move energy through our bodies and open up to energy through the breath. So make sure as you're grieving that you're breathing fully, so that can move energy through your body. It can also move the grief through your body. So taking a few deep breaths. And as you breathe, imagine a color that represents unconditional love to you. And it could be your favorite color or whatever color comes to mind for you. So it might be a beautiful green or blue or purple or yellow. So as you're breathing, imagine this beautiful energy of unconditional love, this color surrounding your whole body. And as you breathe, this beautiful energy of unconditional love is kind of like cushioning your body. It's like a cloud of love, cloud of this beautiful color surrounding your body. And as you breathe, you feel this unconditional love just radiating towards you. This love is loving you in this moment. That it sees what you're going through and is comforting you and loving you and uplifting you as it's surrounding you. So it's like a big loving blanket surrounding you. And as you breathe, all you need to do as you breathe is to feel the comfort and feel the love, feel this cushion of loving energy. And you could imagine it's like the arms of God or Spirit, whatever your spiritual connection is. It's surrounding you. So everywhere you turn is this loving energy surrounding you, enfolding you, supporting you. And even you can imagine as you're breathing that you can allow your body to relax at a new level, that you have this comfort around you, you have these loving arms around you, and you can actually let go a little bit and allow yourself to be just loved and supported, letting yourself, rest and relax into that. And this is pure love. It loves you for exactly who you are. It sees the beauty of your spirit. It feels your heart. It feels what you're going through and feels incredible compassion for you. So feeling this being extended to you, this kind of amazing love, amazing comfort. So breathing into that, allowing yourself to receive that. And taking a few more deep breaths. And imagine with each breath that you're able to feel this love a little bit more. And also know that you deserve this love, that you are a beautiful, divine being, that you were created as this beautiful spirit, and that you deserve to be loved and supported at a very deep level. So just imagine your job in the moment is just to receive that unconditional love, just for being you. And taking a few more deep breaths. And now just coming back to the room, you can open your eyes and wiggle your toes and move your body a little bit and give yourself a big hug. Feel that loving energy and just really know that this loving support is with you each and every moment throughout the day, and you at any time can tune into it. Could be during your sacred time or just any time during the day when you need to open up to that loving support, just close your eyes and do this exercise.
That is a wonderful exercise, Shelley, that you shared with everyone. So very helpful.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention to the listeners that with all the guest speakers we are having 2 different people a day speak, and all the recordings are available up to 48 hours later, so you can hopefully fit it into your schedule. If for some reason you can't, the recordings will be available for purchase. And I mention that because of all these wonderful tools we're receiving from Shelley as well as other speakers. You might want to have them in your toolbox, your arsenal, to help you through grief. And then also for all the professionals on our call, I think you may be hearing techniques that might be new to you or that you might find helpful to your clients. So I just wanted to let you know of that as well. And then last thing, Shelley, I believe you had something you wanted to share with all the listeners as well.
Yes. Through the association, so we have, it's called, the website for the association is www.thegahp.com. And on the website, we have a few different things. One is, we've talked about this certification training program that Chelsea went through, and we do have a listing of holistic psychotherapists, healers, and coaches that have gone through this training. So they're able to use these methods with their clients to support them, through the grief, help with this reconnection with your spirit and your spiritual connection. So you can go to the website and look at, if you're wanting to reach out and get some support, that is a beautiful option. And so you can look on that page and see who's certified. The other thing is, for those of you who are professionals, we do have a free holistic practice building kit, and we have tools and resources for you to develop your business, your practice as a therapist, healer, coach, or health practitioner. So that is another resource as well. So, and we also have the certification training program that we've been alluding to. There's details about that on the website as well. And I think that's it, Chelsea. I can't think of anything else. But yeah, it's just a really good resource, the website is, for, finding a practitioner or stuff related to learning more about holistic methods or building your practice. Because what our intention with the association is to bring these holistic methods. The reason why we focus on helping people build their practices is we want more people to have access to this kind of healing, which is healing at the core level. So we help people already doing this beautiful kind of work to get out there so they can be visible to the people they're spiritually meant to be supporting. So
that is awesome, Shelley. Thanks so much for sharing that resource. Very helpful.
Yes,
a lot of
you're welcome, Chelsea.
And I should mention, too, some of the practitioners who are certified through Shelley's program are actually in our telesummit as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes, so you'll get to know them through that, yes.
Sure, and they will be offering other unique techniques that are very helpful, so keep an eye out for that. And thanks, everyone, for your time today. We hope you enjoyed everything. Thank you, too, Shelley, for all the helpful tools you have shared, very powerful, useful tools that will make a difference. I'm so glad we're able to share and get more education out on this topic. That is awesome.
Yes, absolutely, Chelsea, and thank you for putting this together. It is so needed, and, I'm so happy that you took time and energy to really share all this amazing information to really make a difference for people going through the grieving process.
Yeah, so everyone on the call, stay tuned in for some of our other speakers as well, because I really think you'll be getting a lot of valuable information, and we'll let everyone go for now. And thanks again, Shelley.
Okay, you're welcome, Chelsea. Bye, everybody.
Bye.